Welcome to the ramp. Oh, come on, enter in. Let the praise begin. The ramp. Oh, come on, enter in. Let the praise begin. The ramp. Oh, come on, enter in. Let the praise begin. The ramp. Oh, come on, enter in. Let the praise begin. The ramp.
It is common all across Christendom, especially those of us in the charismatic Pentecostal liturgical style of worship, we will frequently equate a female's pregnancy with the individual believer. It is not uncommon for us to hear things such as being pregnant with purpose, or God having impregnated us with a destiny. But I found out so often we use these illustrations in the body of Christ without the individual ever knowing what it really means to be pregnant with purpose. Or better yet, how could an infinite, unlimited God, being of spiritual essence, cause a finite and filthy individual like myself to even become pregnant? Now, I believe in the miraculous birth of Mary. And even though I have heard some people give some crazy testimonies in the house of God, I have yet to hear of God climbing in anybody's bed. Come on, somebody. Now, for you spiritual folk that say God is your husband and God is your wife, just remind me to pray for you after service, because I don't want you going any further into this new year with a lying spirit. Come on, somebody. Because when God created us, is it all right if I teach tonight? Because when God created us, He created us as spiritual and physical beings. And since God is a spirit, therefore my relationship with God is spiritual. But even though God and I have a spiritual connection or relationship, there is some physical attention that my body longs for. Oh, y'all not saying nothing. There is some physical attention that my flesh craves for that a prayer service just cannot fulfill. In fact, the Bible lets us know the last time a spiritual being, which in this case were angels, entered into a woman, they produced giants. And that's why in this season you cannot afford to connect with the wrong individual. And just because they may be spiritual don't make it no better. Because like my pastor said, just because something is spiritual don't necessarily mean it's godly. So when you find yourself in relationships that was not ordained by God, it causes you to produce giants. In other words, you find yourself giving birth to some things that you thought were small and were no big deal, only to find out that what you had produced ended up being bigger than what you thought. I feel something pushing me here. I had no idea after I smoked my first blunt, it would lead me to selling it at the risk of almost losing my life. I had no idea after I slept with her, she would want a commitment from me. But because I'm not ready, in the meantime, she's slashing my tires. And so now I'm like Moses at the foot of my promise, only to find out that what I had produced and gave birth to is now standing in between me and my promise. Give somebody a high five and say, neighbor, I've got to watch what I produce, because I don't need no more giants in my life. Tell somebody, I know that's right. I know that's right. So again, since my relationship with God is spiritual, and I promise I'm almost through. and not physical, how does one become pregnant by him? Well, statistics show that in every marriage, people file for divorce over one of three things. The first thing people will file for divorce over is because if there's a lack of communication. The second reason a couple files for divorce is if they are experiencing financial difficulty. But the third reason is what caught my attention the most. The third reason people file for divorce is because if there is a lack of intimacy in the relationship. And of these three categories, intimacy is the one that brings forth pregnancy. That's why here in the book of Isaiah, God challenges us with the question of faith. When he declares, shall I bring to birth and not cause you to bring forth? And shall I cause you to bring forth, then shut up your womb. So the reason why some of you haven't become pregnant and don't understand your purpose is because you have yet to become intimate with God. Because when you become intimate with God, it is then you will find God's purpose for your life. And then when you know his purpose, it is then you will have to know his word. Because how can you really be intimate with someone unless you know who they are and what they desire? See, there are some folk, y'all can sit down, I'm just talking. There are some folk who try to have one night stands with God. And that's when the only time you talk to him is when you need a blessing in that present situation. And after you get yours, you're not coming back until you need another blessing from him. And then there's another group of people who do everything you do, and they wonder why they have yet to become pregnant by God. They shout when you shout. They dance when you dance. And they even holler like you holler. But they still have yet to become pregnant by God. And the reason why is because they've been protecting themselves. Because they are afraid of what God is going to birth out of their spirit. And so they play it safe by only doing the minimum and not maximizing their full potential. And as a result, they never go beyond their expectations. I feel something pushing me down. But then there are some of us in here who have been pregnant for a long time. And we know that at any second now, we're about to give birth to what God has impregnated me with. For you went through the first trimester when you were just excited about being pregnant. But because you weren't showing, you begin to get discouraged. Because even though you were pregnant, folks didn't recognize you and have the nerve to look over you. But just when you was about to drop your head and throw in the towel, God quickens your spirit and allowed your promise to awaken, just to remind you that your promise was still alive. Can I preach to you? Then you made it through the second trimester when your anointing began to show and everybody began to notice you. Even the folk that doubted your calling in the first place were now convinced that you've been anointed by God. I feel like preaching. You were able to endure the pain with gladness because you were excited about being pregnant. Look at your neighbor, say, neighbor, I went through the first and I made it through second. But tell them, but now I'm in the third trimester. I feel like preaching now. And now that I made it to the third trimester, I'm just ready to get this thing out of me. Jeremy, I'm ready. For my gladness has now turned into contractions. And now when I look myself in the mirror, I can't even recognize myself because